In the shadows of Philippine history, some crimes have left scars too deep to fade, and stories too haunting to forget. Today, we revisit one of the nation's most pivotal moments, the assassination of Ninoy Aquino. Told in gripping, immersive storytelling, this is Pinoy true crime story, where the truth is told, one chilling case at a time. The morning of August 21, 1983, Manila was sweltering under the humid embrace of the late Philippine summer. In the air, there was a strange sense of anticipation, not of celebration, but of tension. For 3 years, a man had been far from home, exiled in America, recovering from heart surgery and biding his time. That man was Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. In the Philippines, his name had long been a lightning rod, loved by some, feared by others, and despised by those in power. A former senator and outspoken critic of President Ferdinand Marcos, Ninoy had been one of the loudest voices against martial law when it was declared in 1972. Arrested, imprisoned, and later allowed to leave for medical treatment, many believed he would never risk returning to a country still under the iron grip of dictatorship. But Ninoy was not a man to stay silent. In the United States, he gave speeches, met with world leaders, and urged the international community to pressure Marcos. He knew his return would be dangerous, perhaps even fatal. But in his mind, the risk was worth it. He once said, "The Filipino is worth dying for." That morning in Taiwan, Ninoy boarded China Airlines Flight 811, bound for Manila. He was traveling under a false passport in the name of Marcial Bonifacio, a clever nod to his years in solitary confinement at Fort Bonifacio. On the flight, he wore a beige jacket, a white shirt, and a confident smile, speaking to journalists who accompanied him. As the plane descended into Manila, Ninoy confided to some reporters that he expected to be arrested the moment he set foot on Philippine soil. He advised them to keep their cameras ready. He even wrote down a few names in a small notebook, people to be contacted if anything happened to him. At exactly 1:00 p.m., Flight 811 landed at the Manila International Airport, which decades later would bear his name. From the moment the doors opened, the atmosphere was tense. Soldiers and airport security officers boarded the plane, bypassing passengers to head straight toward the middle rows where Ninoy sat. Colonel Rolando Galman, dressed in civilian clothes, and several members of the Aviation Security Command, AVSECOM, escorted him off the plane. The journalists who had followed him were blocked from going any further. One of them managed to snap photos through the narrow airplane windows as Ninoy was led away. The group moved down the service stairs onto the tarmac. Then, in the sudden chaos that followed, a single gunshot rang out. Ninoy fell face first to the ground, blood pooling beneath his head. Beside him lay another man, later identified as Rolando Galman, officially labeled as the assassin by the military. Panic erupted. Soldiers rushed in, weapons raised, shouting orders. The bodies of both Ninoy and Galman were quickly placed on a military truck and driven away. The entire incident took less than a minute. For the nation, however, that minute would echo for decades. The official version, released by the Marcos government within hours, claimed that Galman, acting as a communist hitman, had shot Ninoy at close range before being gunned down by security forces. But this explanation was met with skepticism, and soon, outright disbelief. Back in the streets of Manila, news spread like wildfire. Radio stations buzzed, and people whispered in offices, jeepneys, and markets. By the time Ninoy's bloodied body was brought to his mother's house in Times Street, Quezon City, the magnitude of what had happened was sinking in. His wife, Corazon Cory Aquino, was still in Boston with their children when she received the devastating call. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the press, vowing to bring the truth to light. 2 days later, tens of thousands of Filipinos began lining up at the Aquino home to pay their respects. Ninoy's body was laid in an open casket, unembalmed, in the same blood-stained clothes he wore on the day he died. His family refused state honors, rejecting any attempt by the regime to control the narrative. The public outrage was immediate. Questions swirled. How could a man as heavily guarded as Ninoy be assassinated in broad daylight, at the country's main airport, under military watch? Why had the government been so quick to declare Galman the lone gunman? An independent fact-finding body, the Agrava Board, was formed to investigate. Over the months that followed, witnesses testified, evidence was reviewed, and the cracks in the official story grew wider. Photographs taken by the journalists on the plane suggested that Ninoy was surrounded by soldiers when he was shot, not by Galman. In 1985, after years of legal battles, a court found 16 military men, including General Luther Custodio and other high-ranking AVSACOM officers, guilty of double murder. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, though many continued to proclaim their innocence, claiming they were scapegoats in a larger conspiracy. For the Filipino people, however, the question of who truly ordered the assassination remained unanswered. Many believed that the plot could not have been carried out without the knowledge of those at the very top of power. Ninoy's death became the spark that ignited a movement. The sight of his lifeless body in that coffin became an enduring symbol of sacrifice. Millions attended his funeral procession, a sea of people stretching for kilometers, holding yellow flowers and banners that read, "Leben." In the years that followed, the momentum grew. Cory Aquino would eventually stand as the opposition's candidate in the snap elections of 1986. Widespread protests against electoral fraud culminated in the historic People Power Revolution, toppling the Marcos regime and restoring democracy. But while Ninoy's assassination transformed Philippine history, it also left a wound that never truly healed. Decades later, the mystery of who ultimately ordered his death lingers. Was it a calculated political move to silence a returning opposition leader? Was it an act carried out by rogue military officers? Or was it something even deeper, buried in the shadows of power? August 21st, 1983 will forever be remembered. The day a man stepped off a plane, ready to face prison, danger, or worse, and met a bullet instead. The day that silence fell on the tarmac, only to give birth to a roar that would topple a dictator. And in the words he once spoke, etched into the nation's memory, "The Filipino is worth dying for." The gunshot that echoed on the tarmac didn't just end one man's life. It shook an entire nation and changed the course of Philippine history forever. Decades later, questions remain, and the truth still casts a long shadow. If you were gripped by this story, there are more untold crimes and chilling truths waiting for you here on Pinoy True Crime Story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And together, let's keep uncovering the darkest chapters of our history.